Hey there, everybody. Mr. ERC Kevin C. checking in here. Hope you're having an absolutely awesome day. I am so excited to spend a few minutes with you on this Facebook Live. This is the first one me and Kurt have had a chance to do here, and so hopefully we pull this off right, Kurt. But we're excited because we have the opportunity to talk about something that's really unique and special. When it comes to business owners and what business owners should be paying attention to. Kurt, there's a lot of noise out there about ERC, isn't there?
Yeah, a lot of people
so,
jumping into.
Absolutely. And
arena.
so, Kurt was, is a good friend of mine. He's become a friend of mine over the last 6 months here. But he kind of came into the industry of learning about a little about ERC, and he and Mark, as you see on the call here, kind of introduced me to the ERC program, and I just was blown away by it. So, Kurt, first, before we kind of talk about what you've done on ERC and how many and the clients you've helped, talk a little bit about your business background. I think you and I are very similar. I'm kind of a serial entrepreneur, always looking for ways to get in business and help other business owners. But talk a little bit about your background, my man.
Well, my background has been mainly in the furniture industry the last 40 plus years. I hate to say how long. Started when I was about 18.
Wow.
So 44 years ago. Started out working in a warehouse, sweeping floors and moving furniture and unloading trucks, and eventually worked my way to the sales floor and then management. And in 1981, I started working for a company as a sales rep.
Wow.
Direct to furniture stores. And then later I spent 11 years as a sales manager for a company out of Tupelo, Mississippi, manufacturer. And then I was a vice president of a company that's based in Canada and the US.
Wow.
For 11 years as well. So spent a lot of time in furniture.
Wow, that's phenomenal. That's phenomenal. Yeah. I kind of have a little bit of a hodgepodge of a lot of things, but me and my ex-wife, we owned a very successful medical company. Me and my wife now, we own a social media management company. And so so working with businesses is kind of our passion. From that standpoint. So let's talk a little bit about how you kind of stumbled upon ERC. And then we'll talk a little bit about what ERC really is. But talk to us about how you kind of found out about it.
Well, I had someone call me on the Friday before Memorial Day and said, "Have you heard about this?" And I said, "No clue." They said, "Well, it's part of the CARES Act," in which I was familiar. And I actually contacted a lot of people whenever the PPP loans first came out. When the CARES Act originally was passed, I had a lot of friends that I let know, "Hey, contact these, figure out how to apply for this, because you need these funds." That's when they had everybody shut down, couldn't go, do a lot of things. So ERC was part of that original package, but nobody knew it.
Right.
You could only do ERC or PPP. Everybody did PPP. The banks were jumping over each other to get the applications in because they were getting paid for every loan that they made.
Like $2,500 per loan.
Yeah, $2,500 per loan. They got a bonus of $2,500. So, they made it easy. All you had to do is go down and sign and get your money. ERC was a lot more complicated, and as I said, you couldn't do both.
Yeah.
Then in December of 2020, they passed new legislation that did away with not being able to do both. Now they allow companies to do ERC and PPP.
Sure.
There are some restrictions, but you still can qualify. And there's been about 4 or 5 different legislative changes during this entire process from March of 2020 till now. And some of the original requirements where you had to lose, had to have a significant decline in revenue. You don't have to anymore. And again, like I said, if you did PPP, you weren't allowed. That's no longer the case as well. And I was introduced to this by a guy named Tony Swantek, who's the owner of Jorns and Associates. Tony, I've known him about a year. Great guy, lives in Wichita, Kansas. If you don't like Kansas,
my father-in-law lives in Wichita, Kansas. Must be a good guy.
Yeah, I don't live very far from there, about 45 minutes away. So, but anyway, Tony, he's a serial entrepreneur as well. And he owns a lot of different businesses. And he was filing for one of these businesses that for the ERC funds. And he and his accountant, whose name is Justin Jorns, that's who the name Jorns and Associates comes from. They figured out two things. ERC is very complicated. There's like 5,500 legislation, 1,200 directives from the IRS. So there's a lot that goes into it. And if you don't know it, it's just overwhelming. So
Yeah.
Tony saw the opportunity for a couple of things. One, he wanted to help a lot of businesses because he was trying to get the funds for his business. And as difficult as it was, he knew that somebody needed to step up and make it easier for people to get it. So that's what he did. And, since July of 2021, Jorns and Associates has filed for 8,500 businesses and gotten back for those businesses $4.5 billion.
Wow.
So yeah, it's some serious business. And,
Wow.
A lot of companies are eligible. A lot of companies don't think they're eligible. They've been told by their accountant they aren't.
Well, let's talk a little bit about that because, as you well know, I have a lot of content out there about ERC, and I get bombarded with questions all the time. And so you've helped a lot of businesses personally connect to the ERC program, spoken to a lot of businesses. You actually have a big sales organization as well. You kind of expanded that a little bit and that's how, how you and I kind of met. But so I hear a lot of things from business owners, and the first one is, I used to be in the pallet industry, okay, as an example, really good, down home, good people who run pallet yards. They were kind of considered, a priority business during COVID, because they needed to get stuff out of manufacturing. And all of these guys had their cost went up because their cost of goods went up. And so their P&L didn't match, 2021. And so all their accountants told them, no, they don't qualify as far as that's concerned. And they may or may not qualify depending on their business, but that's not necessarily a reason not to talk to and learn a little bit more about ERC. Am I right about that?
Yeah, exactly right. We run into it every single day of somebody that's been told just recently. I mean, just, may even today, could have been, you don't qualify because you didn't have a decrease in revenue or significant decrease in receipts. That's not the case. And unfortunately, because this program is kind of flown under the radar, a lot of CPAs, they're very good at what they do. That doesn't mean that they know all about what's going on with the ERC, because it's a very complicated system, program. There's a lot of T's to cross and I's to dot. And if they aren't doing that on a regular basis, they just are not tuned into what's going on with it.
And it's simply not just numbers. I mean, at the end of the day, there's a lot of things about the code, the municipality codes. Am I correct on that may have affected the business?
Yeah, we go through a lot of different steps. There's I think there's like 12,000 ordinances that were passed, countrywide, as far as shelter in place, no indoor dining, have to hang up plexiglass everywhere, just a whole bunch of stuff. Everybody went through something with that.
Yeah.
And so we investigate that, any orders for shutdown or partial shutdown. We investigate if they had a decrease in gross receipts. We also investigate indirect shutdowns. And indirect shutdowns, maybe you didn't personally have a shutdown, but your clients or your suppliers were affected by a shutdown, which could affect you. Just to give you an example, I had a client that did $750,000 with Whirlpool Corporation in 2019. 2020, he did $75,000. So just an astronomical difference. That was his number one appliance, provider. Supplier. So to make a long story short, he was, even though he was able to find other sources and he still, did good business, because that was such a significant part of his business, that was what was, deemed as a nominal effect on a more than nominal part of his business. So as I said, there's a lot of different ways to qualify. For him, that was one, just because even though he did more business than he did in 2019, He wasn't, his key supplier couldn't do it. We've had examples of other people where they did more business, but there's maybe one whole segment of what they used to do that they did zero in after 2019 because they couldn't get that particular product, like aluminum or something like that. There were shortages where just certain products you couldn't get. So even if they
as an example, if their manufacturing supply chain came out of China and it was all slowed down and they couldn't get their supplies, could that possibly be a reason that they would qualify?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Wow.
Shipping, was delayed. I mean, people were getting stuff, but it was taking, 6-month delays, different things like, and plus the costs skyrocketed.
Exactly.
So there was a lot of impact. Because of the freight costs skyrocketed and everything, some of the companies here that were supplying other companies here quit bringing items in from China because the freight got so expensive.
Exactly.
So they ran out of inventory, and so that made everybody else scramble. So I mean, it just has a domino effect.
Wow.
A big percentage of people are going to qualify for this.
So that's manufacturing. So what about the mom and pop restaurant? Would they be a viable candidate for ERC money?
I mean, I don't think there was a restaurant anywhere in the country that wasn't affected by this.
Exactly. Yeah, I think you're right.
And a lot of restaurants did more business, but they did it curbside or delivery. They no longer had people coming in to eat, or if they did, they had to have, every other table marked off. I'm sure everybody's been into a place where they had the yellow tape on the table. Don't sit here. Big old
plexiglass or whatever.
Yeah. So even though they were able to operate, they had to change their mode of operation. And, it just, those are the type of things that can result in them qualifying for the ERC funds. So,
and I know you've helped a lot of healthcare facilities like nursing homes and such as that. Is that correct?
Living, nursing homes, those types of things. Those guys were all shut down as far as, unfortunately, it was basically like being put in prison.
Exactly.
My mother was in an assisted living when this started. She just moved in, and they locked them down where they had to eat every meal in their own room.
Oh my goodness.
Couldn't leave the room. Nobody could come and see them, just all kinds of things like that. And then the other thing was the assisted livings and nursing homes that I run into, they had terrible time finding suppliers for like hand sanitizer, toilet paper, food, things like that, that they were scrambling on a daily basis to find because, a lot of them did stuff like with Sam's Club or Costco, they'd go get toilet paper. They rationed them, they said, well, you can't have that.
Yeah, exactly. I remember that.
Have one package or whatever, and when you're out there and you've got, 40 or 50 residents, it's not like, just a family of 4 at home. They've got to have more, supply than that. So just things like that really affected those guys. And almost every industry you can think of, there was some type of effect like that.
So what would you say, because obviously you've helped a lot of businesses, and we got a lot of businesses who've asked for information. I was blown away whenever I kind of posted this. I was kind of haphazard, hey, I like putting content out there, and I had, 55 people say, hey, Kevin, I want information right away for my business. And I had people on LinkedIn. Right. But really, I mean, what would you say is, if there's any factors that probably don't qualify our business, what would that be? Like, are they too small? If they have the business owners, talk to a little bit about that.
Well, one of the issues, is how many W-2 employees. It has to be a W-2 employee. It can't be 1099 employee, okay. Self-contractor. But W-2 employees are eligible. Most companies have a break point of 5 or more, up to 500 W-2 employees. More than 500 is not considered a small to medium-sized business anymore. So that has a different set of rules. There still may be some available money, but it's going to be different than what the ERC funds are. But, 5 or less is really tough because usually if you have a business with 5 employees or less, 2 or 3 of them are family members and none of them are eligible.
Got it.
So, yeah. So
even if they're incorporated and they got to get their own W-2, but they still
it doesn't make any difference. Yeah, if they're ownership, they're gonna have to,
And that's not a rule you created. That's what the IRS says, correct?
Right, yeah, that's right. Yeah, the IRS is the one that sets that family members are not allowed, in owners are not allowed.
And what's the
So
max that a business qualifies for?
up to 26,000 per W-2 employee. And that breaks down to, there's $5,000 allowed for the last 3 quarters of 2020. And there's $7,000 allowed per quarter for the first 3 quarters of 2021.
Okay,
So you have 5,000 in 20, 21,000 in 21.
got it.
Yeah, and it's all based on wages. You know, if you had PPP funds, it can affect some of that as well. You know, some of these companies out there, if you've got 50 employees, could be as much as, you know, $1 million or more. You know,
Yeah.
some companies may only get them a couple of 100,000. That, you know, they're not all companies are equal.
Sure.
I sure recommend going with a company that's a CPA firm that specializes in this and knows what they're doing. You don't want to be somebody's guinea pig. This is too much money to risk. And the other thing, you know, as I said before, we're talking about specializing. You know, if you've got a great doctor, it doesn't matter how much you like that doctor. If he comes and says you've got, you know, a brain tumor, or you've got, you know, some other serious condition,
Yeah,
you're going to go to a specialist to get that taken care of.
absolutely.
Because you want someone that knows and deals with that type of thing every day. You know, if I needed a hip replaced, I wouldn't ask my doctor, do you think you can go ahead and, you know, cut in there and see it, you know, take a chance, see how you do. You don't want to do that. You know, you don't want to take any chances. You want to get somebody that's done hundreds or thousands of those so that you have the best result possible. And that's no different than this. There's such a big amount of money available, and there's so many different parameters and factors of how much you're going to get. If somebody doesn't know what they're doing, 2 things can happen. One, they can leave a lot of money on the table that you should have had. The worst thing is that they may not provide the proper documentation and cover all your bases, so that if the IRS comes back in 2 or 3 years and says, I need to see, you know, we need to see your documentation supporting what you claimed,
Right.
you may have to give it all back. And that would be the worst case scenario, because
Oh, by the way, there's 80,000 new IRS agents coming down the pipe.
87, yeah, 87. Yeah. So, you know, 2 things, you want to try to maximize what you get, but the more important is you want to be able to keep what you get. And if you go with some company that's using tax preparers that doesn't know, you know, there are no CPAs involved, you know, all that, they're more worried about getting a fee and not making sure that everything's done right. So
Absolutely,
it's
absolutely.
a-
So
it's a
that's
key.
kind of a good segue, because, you know, out of transparency, okay, you know, the fact is, Kurt and I wanted to come on here and just give good information. But, you know, I know a lot of these business owners are getting text messages and robocalls,
People
ERC
coming out of the woodwork.
$26,000, you know, and not all of these guys are really have the access to what you and I really are able to offer them. So let's talk a little bit about George, and we're not here to put down anybody else out there, but
Right.
let's be real. You know, there's a reason we chose George to work with them, and you
Right.
kind of alluded to a little bit earlier. What 8,500 you know, is it 8,500 now? Your business
8,500 businesses and $4.5 million that they've gotten back for people.
So you know, you've been a very successful businessman over the years. Why did you choose to work with Tony and George? And obviously, you know, and then we'll talk a little bit about some of the benefits of working with us on helping getting them connected.
Yeah. So, you know, the integrity, you know, Tony is a very principled person. He's not going to do anything to take a shortcut. He'll turn away business if he doesn't think you're going to qualify. There may be a different company say, oh yeah, we'll get you qualified, but he is not going to qualify somebody that it's not going to hold up under review. And you don't want to be in the position where you're being scrutinized and then find out that, you know, we sure wish these guys would have done it like it's supposed to be done, because now we have to pay that money back in addition to the penalties and interest for having that, you know, money that wasn't supposed to be ours for however long it is. And it could be devastating for a business if they are not handled properly and do the proper thing. ERC is a lifesaver. I mean, business right now is tougher than it was during the pandemic for a lot of people.
You're exactly right.
You know, inflation, just all kinds of things, you know, and for a while there, the government was just printing money and handing it out to people. and they were out spending it. So a lot of businesses did well. Things have slowed way down right now. And there's some businesses that this is going to save or, really come, to the rescue. Nonprofits as well.
I've helped quite a
Private
few.
schools, things
Yeah.
like that. Those all are, things get tough for them too. When the economy starts slowing down, donations slow down coming in and all those different things. So, I mean, it's really important for those guys as well that these funds are available and it may keep them afloat.
Well,
So,
and what I learned along this process is, companies like Walmart and all these gigantic companies, they're used to going after those there's payroll credits that they have access to as large
Right.
corporations, and they have tons of attorneys and tons of accountants that all they do all day long is go after that money. And the fact is that the small business owners don't have that. And
Right.
so, and we at George, we give them that kind of leverage to be able to utilize that.
Yeah.
Accounting based, accounting firms. So talk a little bit about the advantages of actually working with an accounting firm,
So
and submitting it.
yeah, Jorns has over 400 people on staff now. That number was just updated just in the last couple of days. So over 400 people on staff. We have CPAs, forensic auditors, tax attorneys, internal auditors. We have registered IRS agents. We've got the whole gamut of who you would need to have in-house to be able to do everything from A to Z. So our system is we bring the customer in, we get their information, and we start the forensic audit or whatever, the background of checking for any ordinances that were passed that is affected them. They do all the checking. You don't, as a client, you don't have to do any of that stuff. Now, there's some companies that do make you, look up and find out what the ordinances were and let us know. We don't do that. We do all that for you. We find out all that. We have a database that we can go in and do. Jorn spent $500,000 on software specifically for ERC program. They invested a lot of money in it to do it right and to maximize the returns for people. And as well, they also provide a very detailed documentation of what they claimed and why they claimed it. And they have all the sources of here's what it pertains to in the legislation, and they'll give, all the page and, annotation of whatever, that affected that. But they're very detailed on that. And, that's the type of thing you need. If they ever came back and said, hey, we just want to check and see if this was legit, that you claim this, and you have a report that's 50 to 300 pages long that backs up everything that was done, signed by a CPA, or if you have a two paragraph note at the top of a spreadsheet that says, here's what we did, here's why we claim this money.
My brother-in-law Bubba filled it out for me.
It's not going to go over very well. And that's being done every day.
No doubt.
There's companies out there that they've jumped into this. They see that there's money to be made. They're not as worried about helping people and helping you keep the money as they are, let's just make some money. And they haven't invested the money. They don't have the professionals operating and doing it. So that's what you get with us is we're doing everything by the book. We won't file something that's going to put you or us in jail. We're not going to risk anything. We carry error and omission, $1 million error and omission policy. We give audit support for 5 years. We do a lot of things trying to cover that client and protect them.
And what I'll do, Kurt, is that below this one, below this video, I'll also attach a video from George, the accounting firm. It's a 5-minute video that kind of does a real good overview. I mean, Kurt's done a phenomenal job just talking about it right here, but it kind of gives you just some good information directly from Tony, who was talking about a second ago, and a little bit about it. Let's set some reasonable expectations for folks. This is not a quick process, is it?
Nope. No, if it's done right, it's not. There's people touting we can have your deal filed in 2 weeks, whatever. If they're doing that, they're not doing it right. I can guarantee you that. It's going to take on average 6 to 9 months from the time you start till the time you get your checks from the IRS directly to you before, that's about the amount of time it's going to take to see the money.
Wow.
So it's not a fast process. The good news is it could be very, lucrative process though.
Yeah.
It could bring you a lot of money. So, a company with 20 employees, $500,000 is a lot of money, even if you have to wait 6 or 9 months for it.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
yeah. And I'm not guaranteeing you'd get $500,000, but potentially you could. I mean, that's about what we average on that, on that number of employees. So.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, very good. I think I'm going to take one question. I think from Leanne here. Then we're going to drop off since Leanne threw her. Leanne, go ahead.
You're going to have to unmute her.
Yeah.
Oh, it's okay. I think I got it. So yeah, thank you so much. I'm just learning all I can and making calls every day I try to talk to at least 10 businesses a day, and my goal is to put on 2 a week. I've got a couple thinking and in the hopper, and hopefully will come on board with us. But I've got 2 accountants on board that see the vision of it. A couple of them are grouchy and negative, and there's scams out there, and you better watch what you're doing, and you're going to be liable, and blah, blah, blah. Of course, there's the negative guys, but
Kevin, I think we lost her.
I think we did.
We lost the audio.
Uh-oh.
Oh, well.
Well, so I think
Sorry,
she's going
Leanne.
to talk a little bit about working with some accountants and such as that.
Yeah.
So what I would say, Leanne, is you probably work within our group, and so and that's probably a good question to kind of throw into our Facebook group there.
Yeah.
From a business standpoint, obviously there are some accountants who are kind of skeptical out there. Kurt, so talk a little bit about that, from your standpoint, and what you say to them.
Well, I just, what I tell them is that, we're a CPA firm. We do everything by the book. We don't file anything without sending it to the client. The client's welcome to have their CPA review it all. Nothing is done without their approval. And once we do prepare all the paperwork and everything, send it to them for them to sign off, then we'll have our CPA sign and put his, registration number on there. And then we mail it off to the IRS, and, a few months later, you're going to start seeing checks come back.
Absolutely. So
and out of the 8,500 businesses we filed for, we have not had one kicked back.
Wow.
Just as a flat out refusal of, this does not qualify or whatever. So,
and you just sent me an article, a phenomenal article from Forbes saying 70 to 80% of the businesses out there possibly qualify.
Yeah. That's what the government expects, is that 70 to 80% of small businesses would qualify for these funds. So it's a big percentage.
I mean, the fact is it's well worth 10 to 15 minutes of looking at this video, but also talking with an expert that actually understands the ERC program and getting connected, to see if that's worth that money for you, right?
Yeah, exactly right.
Well, Kurt, I know you are a very busy guy. You've helped a lot of businesses, and I really appreciate you taking the time. I committed to 30 minutes of your time tonight, and unbelievably, I'm being a Southern Baptist preacher's son. I'm surprised I'm going to be right on time. Any final thoughts you have before we close out, my friend?
No, everything, you did great. The main thing with this is there's a lot of people that could use these funds, and that's going to help them. It's a reward for keeping people working during the pandemic. Those people that sat out and got all the extra unemployment benefit while companies scrambled, to find somebody to work. This is your reward.
Yeah.
You kept things going. This is your opportunity to get some of those funds directed to you instead of giving people to sit home and not work. And, what you do with the funds, there's no strings attached to it. There's no earmarks. You don't have to spend it a certain way. So it's just for you to use and use the best way you feel fit, which is, you don't get the chance to do that very often with government money. So this is a good deal.
No doubt about it. Well, I am Mr. ERC Kevin C, and we've had the special guest Kurt Kelly, who has helped hundreds of businesses, thousands of employees, access the ERC credit. And Kurt, thank you so much for your time and helping businesses out there. If you're on my YouTube channel, make sure you hit subscribe, and you'll get posted when this video gets posted. I look forward to working with you. If you're a potential business, look underneath this video as well. There'll be a link to the Jordan's video that Kurt talked about to make sure that you have access to get that information as well. So God bless. We look forward to working with you.
Yep. Have a good night.
Thank you, Kurt.